Home is where you go when there's nowhere left to be. It's a prison cell of closed walls where actually you're free. When you take away meaning, people start behaving wild. See the world as it is, and it's miraculous and beautiful, and it will inspire you to be the best version of yourself.
I have a controversial question.
Oh boy, here we go.
You told me that I probably shouldn't read the Quran.
We're gonna get some hate.
Hey guys, welcome Soul to Soul. Today I have one of my favorite people, Mikhail. He is a professional fighter. He's a warrior poet, has amazing poems that he'll read one right now. We're just going to start with that. One of the smartest guys I know. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things, so let's get to it. The poem. Welcome. First of all, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you again for the invitation. And it's good to see you again. We saw each other pretty recently in Thailand, actually. And
Yes, what a wild place.
That was a fun day, though.
Yes.
Right? That was like a weird last minute intersection of souls, in the tapestry of, destiny. Because we were at this crazy mall and it was like, let's find somewhere better to sit down. And there just happened to be a temple outside and it was like serene and quiet. That was a nice afternoon. But yeah, we were talking about this poem before we sat down here, and then I agreed to read it. So without any context, I'll just go into it. A garden of roses, filled with men with no noses, claiming there's no scent to find. Alongside them are others, both their foes and their brothers, who can smell but are otherwise blind. The two of them fight about which of them's right, concerning the look and scent of a rose. Both sides have a proof and see their foe as aloof, but in truth, not one of them knows. So this is a poem I wrote, I think 2 years ago, when my country, the American Empire, was very concerned about an election. So you have Senate elections, and then you have federal elections that are for, presidential stuff. And the senators, they only get 2-year terms. So no, that's wrong. It's the congressmen who get 2-year terms. Is it? I got it mixed up. Well, who gets the 2-year terms?
I have no idea.
Let me think. It's the congressman. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's an election every 2 years, nonetheless. Some of the senators are up for election and some of the congressmen, but not all of them. So like every 2 years, there's these elections and people are like so passionate about it. And I appreciate that they have a point of view that they believe in and that they take very seriously. But as the poem, I suppose, suggests, I see them as both making good points sometimes, both making flaws and fallacies sometimes, and really just being stuck in a certain point of view. And it becomes sort of like a tribalistic war that doesn't necessarily reflect truth. It says more about the human nature and the human tendency to limit one's perspective to what they understand. And so the blind people see the rose, the ones who can smell it, and then they're arguing about the look and the smell. And it's not that one side is right and the other side is wrong. I think that's a simplistic and perhaps, incorrect way to see politics, to like bifurcate it into this melodrama of like us versus them. And it also dehumanizes people when you put them into a camp with such strong lines of delineation, and it allows you to take what is a soul, a consciousness, something that has beauty, something that has meaning, and reduce it to an enemy. Yeah. Even in your own country, you're supposed to be one country and have a sense of brotherhood or you call them your countrymen. We're supposed to be, in some way united. And some of the most bitter rivalries exist between people that actually have so much in common. So you see that in the politics of America. You see that in the so-called subcontinent, a very controversial term in itself, India and Pakistan. 100 years ago, that would have been more like one country. You can't actually tell much difference between Urdu and Punjabi on a dialectical level. At the street level, they sound the same, but they're very serious that I'm speaking Urdu and he's speaking Hindi and this is that dialect of Punjabi and this and the lines. You can go to the border, right, in Amritsar and see these little ceremonies where they dance around, and it's like they couldn't be more similar. but
Yeah.
they are, sworn enemies. To the rest of the world, to someone in sub-Saharan Africa or Latin America, they would look at that and they couldn't tell them they couldn't tell them apart. And they'd say, like, why are you two people fighting? You look like brothers. You see a similar thing in the Balkans. You see a Croatian talk about a Bosnian talk about a Serb talk about an Albanian. Culturally, very similar people. If you look at their faces, you could not tell them apart, especially as an outsider. You can't really tell their languages apart unless you're a high-level native. To an outsider, you're like, that's one language.
Yeah.
But they promise you that they're not. No, these are different languages. And you see on the cigarette packets, I don't know if you've ever been to the Balkans, you see the cigarette packets, it says basically those cigarette warnings, like, don't smoke, twice in the same script with the same spelling. And you're like, this one's Bosnian, that one's Croatian. So from an outsider point of view, you're like, that's a little bit dysfunctional. You're really very, very similar, but you're magnifying the differences to the point of having bitter rivalries, which even result in hatred. So that would be, I would say, a failure of the human potential to see the beauty in the other and to see the meaning and capacity for good in the other. There's a very famous line in the Quran, "Inna ja'alnakum min shu'aba wa qaba'ila lita'arafu," and it means, I have made you from peoples and nations so that you can know one another, right? Know one another. And the operative word for peoples or nations, it comes from a verb. It's sha'aba. It means to unite and to divide. In English, we'd call this a contronym. A contronym, like if I say like overlook, that's a good contronym. I'm a teacher in a school and I see someone cheating, but he's had a bad day, I overlook it, right?
Yeah.
Or he needs help on his homework and I come and I say, I'm going to overlook your work. So one means look more, one means look less, but they're the same word outwardly, contronym. So sha'aba is in Arabic another contronym. It means to unite and to divide. And so when you take that verb and you turn it into a noun for peoples, the idea being they have to divide from other people. They have to separate to be united on something. So that's one of the great paradoxes of man, is that we do have this tendency, almost a necessity, to unite at the cost of being divided from the other. But the Quranic worldview would suggest that that is so that you can know one another, not that you fight one another. And then the rest of the line says, inna akramakum, ataqakum. Yeah, it's like, so indeed the most noble amongst you are those with the most like deep awareness of the divine. I'm trying to translate difficult terms, but the idea being racism is a fallacy. Tribalism is a fallacy. Seeing you're a little united where the division starts here and I'm united here, and then you say like we're better than that, that's a fallacy. That's the lower self overriding the heart. And the truth is, you're given the beauty of human diversity so that you can know one another, because when you know people from different points of view, in a very subtle way, you learn things about yourself that you couldn't have learned without the division. Like, I'm just as human as a Japanese person, but I can't do what they're doing with the tea ceremony. I can't recreate what they did with the comportment of bowing and the structure of the samurai order and their military organizations. But then I learn about humanity in a way that is far beyond my purview from my selfhood, in a way that's just as human as I am. So then I learn something about myself. Like, I could have been like that. I could have been like this. And if you're gracious instead of racist, basically, you take the good from people and you say, it's from someone else, but I'm going to incorporate that.
Wow.
So that's going back to the poem. I saw politics, not just in the Americas, but people just fighting over things. And it's a missed opportunity to learn from other people's point of views. Before we sat down, we were outside having coffee and we were talking about comment sections.
Yeah.
And
You're going to get some of those here too.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I said, there's a very famous line from Jesus, peace be upon him, he said, "A vessel only pours out what it contains." And so when I see a dysfunctional comment, just like someone saying something vile, angry, they're not informing me about the world. They're informing me about their inward state. They're telling me that they're not content with themselves. They're telling me that they have a sense of frustration, that they have some pain inside that they haven't reconciled. They have something in discord, in dysfunction, in disharmony within themselves, and it's spilling out. If I take a water vessel and it pours out, it's from inside. And so the comment sections for a lot of people are the spilling outs of their inward states. And it's not a thing to look at them and go, "Oh, I'm so upset by it." It's kind of more like pitiful. I feel a sense of sorrow and pity for people that are in such a troubled inward state that they see something they don't understand or don't agree with, and their impulse is to go and like spread something vile,
Yeah.
and it's like it's not a sign of spiritual health, I would
Yeah.
say.
The one thing that we talked about quite a lot in this Bangkok sitting
Oh
in
yeah, that was a great day though.
in a Buddhist temple, and then we spoke quite a lot, which I actually want to touch upon because I really like your view on that is truth. Because politics, whatever it is, everybody using the word truth. My
Mm.
truth is better than yours. But in your, from what I learned from you, that there is truth, like there is real truth and there is subjective truth. So how do you see the truth yourself?
Well, let's I'll try to answer that question, but to couch both the question and the answer and the discussion in the context of when we live, right? Not just where we are. Right now we're in Bali, but when we are existing is a very unique time from a comparative philosophical point of view. We live in the larger time space of modernism, but in the more particular time space of postmodernism. And postmodernism has a crazy claim, to be quite frank, that the only truth is that there is no truth. It's very contradictory because then you have to ask someone, well, is that true? And they say, well, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So the primary spokespeople of that would probably be like, Derrida and Foucault. And then the gendered version of that is Judith Butler. And there's different, you know, Bell. There's a lot of different branches of postmodernism that take that idea of the unknowability of truth and they run with it. And it's very cynical, it's quite destructive. And I don't accept that at all. I think that truth is real. I think it's knowable, meaning with sound epistemology, you can come to something that is true. But these are also claims, right? These are truth claims. And you have to accept, even me coming from my tradition, I'm very, I would say, very well steeped in the Islamic, and Sufi tradition. And I don't hide that or pretend not, that that's not the case. Like, of course, that is my lens and that's the tradition that I'm drawing upon to understand the world. But I believe that truth is knowable and truth is not just a sterile reality, it is part of God itself, meaning God, the infinite, the absolute, the ground of all being, like whatever was at the very beginning before the Big Bang, before whatever caused the Big Bang, before that, before that, before that. You have to get past any human rational desire to have a infinite regress of what before, what before, what before, what before. There has to be a, like what Elon Musk calls base reality. Now, the difference between the, modernists who use the term base reality and traditionalists who use the term God or Allah or the divine or the absolute is that we ascribe, with good reason, attributes to base reality that the materialists are just like not ready to ascribe, like awareness, like Allah being all seeing, all knowing, all hearing. Now, on one level, there's a literal truth. Yes, Allah is all seeing. But on a deeper level, whatever comes to my mind, God is other than that. And my understanding of seeing only operates as a metaphor for whatever that means in the divine realm. It's actually beyond my comprehension. So, for example, in the Quran, in the Bible as well, the idea of the hands of God, like God did this with his hands. Now, level one understanding of that is that this is a hand and the words are a metaphor. That's an acceptable position, because if you're going to explain this to someone who's maybe very young or doesn't have a lot of intellectual depth, that's fine. Like, yeah, this is a metaphor because God doesn't have like a physical hand the way that we have a physical hand. That is a contradiction of being the absolute, which is beyond time, beyond space. On a deeper level, this is the metaphor and God's hand is real. Does that make sense? So like,
Try me again.
okay. So
I'm the one who is a child who needs explanation.
The layer one is that when it says the hands of God, the hands written are a metaphor and there's no actual hand.
Yeah.
The deeper truth, and that magical word, truth, is that this is the metaphor. When it says the hands of God, that's a metaphor and these are real hands. No, these are metaphors.
Okay.
And the hands of God are real, but they're transcendent. We can't actually conceive of what that means. So this is the metaphor.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
All things in that sense, we experience them metaphorically, and their reality is with God alone, truth included. So back to what you're saying, what is truth? We experience something and we see this as true. That is a metaphor for God, who is the truth itself, right? God is the truth, but it's so everything that comes to your mind, God is other than that. Like what it says in the beginning of the Tao Te Ching, the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. Okay. So as soon as you've contained it into cognition, you've already truncated it beyond the infinite capacity which it is. So these are, I don't know, these are like deep concepts, but yes, is truth real? Yes. Truth is an attribute of the one reality that is reality itself. And us as contingent, temporary beings, we exist sort of like mirrors. We're like mirrors, not are. We are like a mirror. We are not producing light. We can only reflect light. God is light, metaphorically, okay? And in light, you have colors, but when they're combined, it's light, it's just whiteness. So all the colors are like the infinite attributes of God, one of them being truth, one of them being justice, one of them being love, one of them being, might, one of them being compassion. So if you separate all those attributes of God into their diverse, dispersed, colored version, that's the cosmos. It's all the names of God manifesting on the small mirrors, right? So this plant, I think it's real. It has the attribute of life. God is living. The attribute of divine life is reflecting in the plant, but it doesn't have sight. So it has an attribute, but I have more attributes. Right? God is existent. My leather journal book, okay, it exists. So God's existence in the absolute sense comes down. It is very metaphorical. It's not coming down, right? But it's reflecting in the book existence. So it has the attribute of God's existence. It's not absolutely existent because it didn't used to exist. God is absolutely existent, but it has not the attribute of knowledge. I have some knowledge. So again,
this plant didn't exist either. Same as you didn't exist.
Yes, I don't have absolute existence. Nothing has absolute existence except for God. Nothing has absolute truth except for God. But what is unique about the human being, you can look at like a tiger. It has majesty. It has strength. That's an attribute. But does it have justice? Not really. That's kind of like something else. A peacock. It's beautiful. It has the beauty reflected in it. But does it have strength? We wouldn't really call it strong. The human being is unique. because we are the creation that has the ability to reflect all the names. We don't do it so easily, but we have the ability. When we purify our inward self, and this is the meaning of the word in English Sufism and Arabic tasawwuf, a basic definition would be the process of purification of the heart. If we purify our heart, we reflect the divine names eventually in harmony. So if they're reflected out of balance, then it'll be more plant-like. It has existence, it has life, it has even a sense of beauty, but it doesn't have knowledge, it doesn't have sight, it doesn't have hearing, right? So there's other attributes that are missing, but we have the ability to reflect the names in totality when we purify ourselves. And when we are missing an attribute like truth, so if we are not reflecting truth, that's like corrosion on the heart. That's a piece of rust from something that we're doing, and it's our rustiness cannot reflect. Our deficiency is like corrosion on the mirror of the heart that fails to reflect. And that's why ultimately all these things, even like, like the politics, I'm talking about people seeing things from different views according to this cosmological frame, which I uphold. The more someone purifies their heart, the less they get trapped in those divisions that see the other as just like totally crazy, right? And like myself is totally guided. Like that's not what's happening, because perception from this point of view is a spiritual reality and not merely a cognitive reality. Perception is organized with your cognition, but the root of it is the purity or lack thereof of the heart. And so when you purify the heart, you start to see different things.
So
You start to,
okay,
please.
I'm with you. What is an example of the truth apart from the absolute truth of divine?
Well, let's start with something simple, okay? Now, I know you like to play devil's advocate, but we'll just keep it we'll keep it real basic. When you say 1 + 1 is 2, from a basic understanding of mathematics, we don't need advanced discussion. You can see it in your mind.
If you subscribe to the framework. So you have to believe in something else to believe in that.
Yes, we have to have axioms. We have to have, you could say, root beliefs that you build other beliefs on top of. You have to have anchors. Otherwise, that's what postmodernism is. And postmodernism tries to get rid of anchors. There's no such thing as truth. It's all relative. And the results is what you see in the modern world. And now, if I'm going to be candid, every single nation that has taken up postmodernism, which includes the philosophy of development, progress, the entire modernist project, right? They're using the capitalist frames, that's rooted in modernism. They're using all these, modern developed countries. Every last one of them has a birth rate below replacement levels, meaning the people are now so dysfunctional they can't do the most basic thing, which is reproduce enough people to continue themselves into the future. So that's not a sign of a civilization being rooted in truth. That is a sign of a civilization having axioms, those anchors that are like not true.
What are the example of those anchors?
Well, that there is no truth. That's a big one. That's a big one. The claim that nothing is true is a faulty anchor. Another big one is materialism. So the claim that material, just atoms and whatever is beneath that, quarks, we don't really know. Quantum physics is more theoretical than actual. We're doing, we're presuming that on some small level that there's an existent physical reality and it doesn't have anything beyond that. That's materialism, philosophical materialism. I don't want to get it confused with the way that people use materialism to mean buying stuff. That's like more like consumerism meaning. Materialism from a philosophical point of view is the claim that the fundamental base reality is materium. And then from that, consciousness is merely an epiphenomenological outgrowth of the material. Traditional cosmologies, whether it's Hindu, whether it's Buddhist, Christian, Islamic, it doesn't matter. All of them say the exact opposite, that the root of reality is consciousness, meaning God. Of course, the conception of God changes from culture to culture, but the commonality is that it's consciousness producing materium, not material producing consciousness. So that's a big change in axiology that occurred kind of in the 19th century, but of course its roots are
So
even
there
older
was a
than that.
soul before there was a human. Instead of when human was born, there's a soul. The new soul is born.
Well, it's not even about the human aspect. The human is, because we're talking about absolute reality. So if absolute reality is only physical stuff, and my awareness is only an accident from the physical stuff that follows arbitrary rules, it necessitates meaninglessness. And right now, modernity, which includes Japan, it includes Singapore. So it's not about the West anymore, because the West has become so global that modernity, even though it comes from the West, is now in a cross-cultural, transnational, non-geographic, psychographic, entity of most people on Earth. Most people on the earth view the world through that lens, even if they say, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim. Their cognitive frames are usually rooted in the ideas of modernism, which mean tacitly the philosophical axioms of materialism. So even though most people don't think these things or they're usually not taught them, we're acting them out. We're acting them out. So when you get the confused mobs of like face tattoo, green hair people, and you can see they're like very agitated, that is meaninglessness activated. But it took 150 years for it to get that far. The people who first espoused this were still living in the stabilizing forces of the decaying Christendom. So they were still using the morals and the ethical patterns of the Christian world as if that's how people just actually behaved. But when you take away meaning, people start behaving wild, because meaning is like, that's our juice, man. If we don't have meaning, we lose our minds. If we don't have meaning, we go crazy, really.
What is the meaning? What is the meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life? That's almost too heavy to answer. But I would say it's to come into alignment with the ground of all being. Right? Meaning, like,
what does that mean?
Well, that's an English way to explain submitting to the flow of the Tao. A more Islamic way to say that would be just submitting to the will of God, right? And that's going to mean slightly different things, slightly, in different individuations, because people are different. We have different situations, but the overarching idea of coming into alignment with what the reality itself, the absolute, Allah, the existent one who does not go in and out of existence, who was not born, who does not die, who doesn't have time and space, coming into alignment with that's the meaning. That's our purpose. And so we're here in this temporary place. We call ourselves the Khalifatul Ard, the stewards of the earth, because as I was mentioning, we are the rare creature that can reflect all the names. So that gives us a responsibility to take care of the earth. Environmentalism is not just material to me. It's a spiritual reality. Being good to people is not utilitarian. I'm not good to someone because I'm hoping I'm going to get something worldly out of it. I'm good to them because I believe that is me reflecting the names and purifying my heart, God willing, so that I reflect the names better. When I do, so what the difference in this is, the difference in materialism versus having a understanding of the world, basically rooted in spirituality, is either everything is meaningful or nothing means anything. The implications of this really are that everything is meaningful. The way that I put intentions in my heart when I talk to you, meaningful. The way that I say it, if I say it gentle or if I say it harsh, meaningful. It echoes into infinity in a very real way. Or we're just meaningless accidents and nothing has any meaning. And you're just saying it has meaning to make yourself feel better before you die. That's a very cynical way to see the world. Many people have adopted that point of view, and I disagree with them, but that's their destiny. I'm not trying to attack them. I'm not trying to make them feel bad. If they're in that state, I hope that they find a way out of that state, because it's not true. And not just being not true, that state eats you alive. That state of thinking that you don't have meaning and that nothing you do matters eats at your heart, and it's very corrosive. It's more painful than physical pain. When you see people that don't feel that life has a purpose, they lean into suicidal thoughts, and they can handle with meaning immense suffering. When someone feels like what I'm doing has purpose, oh man, the human being is vast. They are treasure troves of ability.
Yeah.
But when you take away that feeling and you just say, they really like internalize that, not so much rationally, because again, these are civilizational axioms. They're not things that people work out on an individual level, except for almost dysfunctionally contemplative people like myself, right? But like most people just kind of go with the flow and like, well, YOLO, you only live once. That's what they told me. And the Nike commercial told me, just do it because it doesn't really matter. So that meaninglessness goes deep into your thought process subconsciously. It comes out in your actions and you live like life is meaningless, and it slowly eats you and you feel despair. You feel darkness. You feel shadow, because what you're claiming, even though subconsciously, is that existence is just an abyss of nothingness and it's all just an accident. That's heart crushing. The opposite, that existence is the loving, is Ar-Rahman, the compassionate one. And we're just here for a short time. We do our best. We try to treat people well. We learn as much as we can. We try to affirm truth to the best of our ability. And then we return to where we came from, which is a spiritual reality, not a physical reality. And so, I affirm meaning. I affirm truth. And it's a really hard sell. It's a really hard sell to tell me when I feel good, right? And I have a clear vision of the world from one of these countries that have a birth rate below 2.1 replacement levels, where the people are on antidepressants, the people have to go to the bar every weekend to try to drown themselves out from how they actually feel. When the people are upset, they're not in a good state. Like, that's a hard sell to be like, no, I'm coming from the truth. Come act like me. It's like, nah, I don't want to feel like you. Not only is it less rational, but I see how you feel. I see how you behave. And that does not appeal to me. I'm actually quite raditu billahi rabban, right? We say this in one of our litanies. I'm pleased with Allah as my Lord, because I see the results. And this is something I had to experience myself, because I'm a Westerner. Right? Like I had to go through a process where I had to investigate these things very deeply, because the worldview that I grew up in, which is Western, was the opposite. So I had to really I had to pressure test my philosophy. I had to pressure test. You get what I mean by pressure test? I had to put it under scrutiny intellectually, and to really seek truth, because under the assumptions that I was taught tacitly, or you could say subtextually, in my schooling, being an American, just in society, that stuff was depressing. That stuff was breaking my heart. That was in a very dark place, really, a very dark place. And I was like, this isn't working. So,
Interesting.
this is not where we were supposed to go with this conversation.
Well, we
at all.
usually do.
That's our nature, man. It's all good. Because I actually, I wanted to talk about this book, partly because this is related. The big problem right now is this philosophy of meaninglessness. Meaninglessness is breaking people's hearts. It's causing them immense pain, confusion. And so, me having a martial art background, I wrote a book on martial art metaphysics that I intend to demonstrate meaning, demonstrate metaphysics without needing to rely heavily on my own tradition. Because if I come to you and you're Canadian, right? I don't know. If you want to be Canadian, this is inside jokes. Okay. Right. And you're like, well, I'm not Muslim. I don't accept your premises. I'm like, that's okay. I got something for you anyway. Right. You do not need to even understand my worldview to understand metaphysics if it's explained properly. So that was one of the goals. And to do this, I take the concept of the names that we just talked about, the names of Allah. And the names of Allah in the Sufi cosmology have a stern category and a gentle category. So Allah is the mighty, the stern, but he's also Ar-Rahman, the all compassionate, right? He's Al-Malik, the king. Ooh, it's very stern, but he's also Al-Wudud, the loving. And so there's a rough categorization of stern names and gentle names. Now, in the Taoist philosophy, they have this concept of the yin and the yang. And the yin and the yang are reflections of that splitting of the names in this world. But because it's a different cosmology, it's not as theocentric. So they start talking about things in Taoist and Confucius philosophy that are more mundane, like hot and cold, hot being yang, cold being yin. Whereas it would be somewhat inappropriate to say God is the hot, right? Saying yin is hot is somehow appropriate. So while the yin and the yang are rooted ultimately in the divine essences, as a terminology, they're very useful to witness the polarities in the created world, in this, existent space that we're inhabiting at the moment, in a way that shows that they have a divine origin without having to go directly into strong theological discussion. So I'll give you some basic examples. And I wanted to explain these things to you anyway at the coffee shop, but now we'll do it here.
Yes, let's do it.
So let's look at fighting. Okay. Fighting means I'm going to touch you.
And for a record, you are a professional fighter.
Yeah. I mean, whether I fight anymore or not is...
Well, tell the people the background, because it's like you're not just a fighter. You're a professional...
Yeah, I'm a professional MMA fighter. I can really do it at a high level. I won nationals in wrestling. I'm still contracted with ONE FC. It's in Asia. I'm old. I don't even know if I'll actually fight again. But like in wrestling matches, I probably had like 500. In that Indian type of wrestling, I probably had at least 1,000.
He's also champion in Kiribati.
Yeah, Kabaddi. Yeah, I was like a 3-time MVP in Kabaddi. Like I was a pro athlete, right? But not like the good kind.
And he's not Indian, which is, I don't know.
Yeah,
okay, let's not go
long story.
Yeah.
But yes, I am a qualified, very well-rounded martial artist. My dad put me in martial arts when I was a little kid. I was probably like 4. I'm having to estimate because I was so little. I don't actually remember like knowing my age, but I had the little, the gi. We went to karate, and then I was put into kung fu, and I was put into qigong, and I was put into tai chi, and and I did wrestling, and I did boxing, and I did Muay Thai, and now I have a black belt in jiu-jitsu. My martial art experience in Kali and Eskrima, it's unusually fast for whatever reason. And these weren't my choices until I was an adult. It was like my dad just put me in this stuff, and I took to it, and it became something that I feel very blessed to have that educational background, and I had some beautiful teachers. And I have to give props to my teachers, because if I didn't have good teachers, I wouldn't have been able to put together this metaphysics of martial arts. And it's quite novel. So looking at like fighting, it requires that I touch you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
just not too hard.
In touch. Oh, yes, you're getting there. In touch. If I touch you soft, we're going to categorize that as grappling. That's the yin, the feminine. And if I increase the speed, eventually you'll say, you didn't pat me, you hit me. So the only essential difference between striking and grappling as essences, as categories, is the intent, the essence of what it does, and the speed is a big thing. So the essence of grappling is a touch that's designed to control that can lead to harm. The essence of a strike is a touch designed to harm that can lead to control. So one can lead to control, or one is control that can lead to harm, one is harm that can lead to control. It doesn't have to lead to those things because the essence is the control and the essence is the harm. Like striking is harmful, it's damage, damage leading to control, control leading to damage. So now we have a bifurcation. That's the yin and the yang. In striking, if I'm sitting across from you in a boxing match, I could be not even touching you. In fact, I'm far enough away from you that you can't hit me. So now we have two attributes. We've got speed, right? Because if I hit you fast enough, I call it a strike, not a touch, and distance. So if distance is striking, nearness is grappling. Nearness is the yin. So now we've got two attributes. We've got distance versus nearness, and we've got speed versus patience, or you could say benign, slow touch. Now let's add another one. If I'm far away from you, I have to see you. I'm in a boxing match, I have to see you. It's necessary. There's no blind Satoishi, blind swordsman. That's a myth. You got to see this guy. I see you and I deliver my hit. Okay. When you're grappling, it's more about the touch, the feel. In fact, there are blind grapplers.
Really?
Yeah, I've wrestled with a blind grappler, and he was actually good. It was not like I was not going easy on him. He could feel everything I was doing, and he was able to fight back. He could not strike me. That would not be possible or fair, because the yang energy is sun. The yin is the moon. The sun is the day. The day is the seen, the visual, the manifest. I can see it easily. The yin is the night, the hidden, a little bit more opaque. So while it's striking, the yang energy is speed and distance and visuality. The sun, the day, easy to see. The grappling is the night energy. It's harder to see. It's touch, not sight. It's nearness, not distance. Right?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
We got it. And so let's think of, for example, a king.
A king.
Yeah, a king.
Okay.
A king is the yang. That's the male.
Yeah.
Now, what's the root operative sexuality of a man? It's plurality. If you give a man with no cultural restrictions,
Yes.
right? He's just Genghis Khan. More or merrier. Give me a new girl every day. That's just their nature.
Yeah.
But if you give a woman that choice, she does not choose multiplicity.
Really?
She chooses quality. She wants the best guy.
What if there's 5 great guys?
Hmm?
What if there's 5 great guys?
She will have the discernment to be able to choose the best of those 5.
That's interesting.
That's nature. And if you look into like social science commentators, they'll call this polygamy and hypergamy.
Yeah.
So whereas the striker, and this is true about striking, he's the king. He can fight 5, maybe even 6 men, but they have to be normal men. A world-class boxer, you put him in front of like multiple people, he's going to knock all of them out. Pop, 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 pop. But a grappler, this is the feminine energy. This is the queen. So the queen can control one king the way that the grappler can fight and control one opponent who's bigger and stronger. But you can't grapple 2 people. So multiplicity is male. It's striking. It requires the eyesight. The singularity, right? Where you're looking for the qualitative, that's feminine. It's touch. It's soft. It's redirection. In the same way that the king, he commands the army.
Yep.
He doesn't suggest it. He tells them what to do. He tells them exactly what to do. So in that way, striking is overt. It's outside. It's direct. I hit you. It's very clear what happened. It's easy to see. You take a novice, he knock him out. He goes, man, he got knocked out. They don't need to have any martial art background. But when they watch grappling, they can't see it. What did he do? I don't understand it because it's in the night. It's hard to see. It's the qualitative.
Okay.
The qualitative is language. The quantitative is math. Striking, just like math, it's very about angles and distance and timing, all things that are easily quantifiable. Grappling is about feel. It's about flow. It's about redirection. It's about feeling subtleties of pressure and using their energy against them. The same way that the queen, if she wants to control the king, she doesn't go and say, do this. No, she whispers gentle, what do you think about this? A woman who's really like crafty, she will control a man not with outward force. She will use subtle suggestion. She will use gentle persuasion. This is when you, especially when you start to train and you understand this is exactly how you work in grappling. You do not force your way through people. You take their pressure and you use it against them. You take what they want and you give it to them and you give a gentle redirection. And it leads to the submission. It leads to the throw. It leads to all those things. But it's done in a very non-calculated, qualitative way compared to this calculating nature of striking. Now, this is like the most basic way to understand it. That
Okay.
striking is
Yeah.
the yang and grappling is the yin,
Yes.
right? And I could go a lot into why there's more. That's why I had to write a whole book about
Okay.
it, right?
Yeah.
But in that field of hand-to-hand combat, that in itself is just the yin energy. Hand-to-hand combat is the yin compared to the yang energy of weapon combat. So weapons are yang. Hand-to-hand is yin. But in every yin or yang, there's a yin and yang. Did you copy that?
Yeah.
In every yin, right, or yang, there's a yin and yang. So
Yes.
in the yin of weaponless
Yeah, there's a
combat,
knife
you have
and there's a
striking and
s-
grappling.
Yeah.
In the yang of weaponed combat, you have the sword and the bow.
Yeah.
These are the essential weapons of mankind.
Yes.
The sword is the yin energy. It has the same attributes of the grappler. It's near. You have to actually be touching. Well, it's touching there,
Yeah.
right? It has envelopment. So you strike from the outside the same way that you envelop. And you can see even the physicality of the human being in union has that same mirroring. Envelopment versus penetration. Envelopment is grappling. Penetration is striking. Penetration is also the arrow. Envelopment is the sword. Nearness. Do I shoot a bow and arrow 2 feet away from you? No, I could be 100 meters away. The same way that there's distance in striking, there's distance in the bow. The same way that there's nearness in grappling, there's nearness in the sword. And just like if you gave me a choice, there's 3 people 50 meters away. I have to fight 3, not 1 now. Of course, give me a bow.
Yeah.
Give me the yang energy. I need to have the element of plurality. Plurality is the yang. Singularity, qualitative, that's the yin. So then when you start to see that the sword and the bow have the same attributes relatively as striking and grappling, you can see that there's a spectrum. So on one end of the spectrum, the yin spectrum, right?
Yep.
Do I need light to cut you with a blade? Or if you go like that, if I'm close to you and there's no light, could I still cut you? I could still cut you. If I'm shooting a bow at you, do I need light?
Yeah.
Highly recommended. You see how, again, night energy, day energy, feminine, masculine. So on this end of the spectrum, we have the sword, the element of nearness. It has slowness because I do not need speed to cut you. The blade is just sharp.
Yes.
I have the element of the night where I could actually use it in the night realistically, as long as I'm touching you, I'd be close enough to do it. I have the element of envelopment, where I'm enveloping from the outside. Whereas the bow, I have the element of distance, plurality, speed, right? And you can see there's a spectrum. Now that you understand the spectrum,
I understand the spectrum.
where on this spectrum is the gun?
The gun is on the both side.
It's on the yang. Exactly. It's on the bow side, the yang side. It's not just yang though. It's like, okay, if yang is the speed of a bow The speed of a gun is off the spectrum. It's
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
If yang is the distance of a bow, the distance of a firearm is insane.
Yes.
If plurality is from the bow, I might have 10 arrows. I might be able to take out 10 people. That's a lot more than one with, right?
Yeah.
How many can I take out with a gun? Thousands. So what the gun is, metaphysically, is a yang imbalance.
Interesting.
It's a dysfunctionally yang entity. It's not just yang, it's like broken yang.
Yeah.
It's too much yang energy. And the result of this is we don't need warriors anymore. Need outwardly.
That's
The
the way
need
to go,
inwardly
yeah.
never left. We don't need them because one man with a gun can mow down an army of samurai with no training. So what the gun allowed were buffer zones of leveraged violence.
Okay.
Buffer zones of leveraged violence. So let's say, for example, me and you have swords. No one else has a sword, but there's 30 of them. We might control them, but we're going to struggle.
Yes.
Okay. If me and you are up in watchtowers and we have bows, right? And they're in like kind of like a pen, we have a better chance of controlling them. And we also have swords, but we have the bows. Now we have like that leveraged violence. I could hit 5 of you.
Yeah.
Okay. Better control. Now we have guns. The control is absolute.
Yes.
It's leveraged violence, dysfunctionally so. So in that same scenario, you've got the 20 people, we're controlling them. Okay. There is possibilities of violence because they could fight back. With the gun, no possibility. So it creates like a safety zone, a buffer zone of peace that is maintained by the degree of the leveraged violence.
Yes.
Okay, so when things are that safe, man, who used to be universally some type of warrior, because it's the middle of the night, someone comes to my house, there's no police, there's no phone. Someone's gonna hurt my family, I have to step up and protect them.
Yes.
Okay, but now there's a cop, he has a gun, right? It creates this buffer zone of peace. And you're like, I'm not gonna go knock on that door because the cops will find me and they'll shoot me. It's like the promise of violence from something that leveraged creates an artificial peace.
Yeah.
In that artificial peace, the masculine essence atrophied. And the man became something like an indoor cat.
Okay.
Okay, he has the form of the cat, but he's indoors and you bring him a little, dish of kibble and here's someone to fill up your dish and here's some water, right? And it's raining, meow, let me back in. That's the modern man. The
Yep.
modern man is an atrophied male. Masculinity has been destroyed by the era of the gun because part of masculinity is the process of going from a young boy into a warrior. And since it's functionally obsolete, it just disappeared. We don't do that anymore. So when you look at martial arts, they are in a deeply atrophied state. They used to be enculturated. They used to be part of every single society, had some kind of concept of martial arts, and men would just do it universally. Now, that's not the case because you don't need to know martial arts. And in their atrophied state, the martial arts tore apart. So you've got the yin sickness martial art and the yang sickness martial art. The yin sickness is tradition that can't fight. You got people doing Tai Chi and Qigong, and I do Tai Chi. Don't misunderstand me. There's value in these things. Aikido can't fight at all. Aikido practitioners cannot fight at all.
Really?
Not a lick. Put them in a cage with a UFC fighter and watch the savagery that gets unleashed on them. It'll be devastating. They can't fight at all. Most, not all. Kyokushin's a big example of an exception. Most karate schools can't fight. Most so-called people doing martial arts where they got a little gi and they're doing stuff can't fight at all. But then on the other side, you've got sports, boxers, judokas, people doing judo, wrestlers, jiu-jitsu fighters, MMA fighters. They can actually fight. They can properly go and fight a human being.
Yeah.
Traditionally, neither of these things would have existed in such a state. They would have been harmonized, where the meaning of the fighting was there, where the ontology, the cosmology, the religious philosophy was accompanied with the physical violence in one unified whole. In modernity, they have been torn asunder in their lack of need. We don't need them because of the age of the firearm, and they fell apart into a yin imbalance and a yang imbalance. And so you've got artists with no martial, nice clothes, right? They do kata, they look amazing, but they can't fight. And then you've got like martial, meaning, warriors with no art. What's the highest value of a boxer? Making money. Like you're like, what's your ontology? So if we were in like a pre-modern world, and I go to a samurai master, I say, I want to learn from you. He'll say, do this recitation in the morning, meditate, read this mantra, do this, and then I will teach you this and I will teach you that. It's like it was a synthesis, a perfectly blended synthesis of cosmological frame, meaning, and training all in one. You were not learning inwardly or outwardly. You were learning them both together. Now I go to a gym, I say, I want to learn how to fight. They say it's $100 a month. That's it. The whole qualification for learning what is a sacred art became commercial transaction. So they took the sacred, they took something that reflects the yin and the yang. They took something that reflects the divine, and they made it profane. You see? So now and I have to include myself. Don't get offended if you're sitting there and he's like, he called me an indoor cat. I'm an indoor cat too. We all are, because we are many generations in to the atrophy of masculinity. We're many generations in. We're talking like our daddies. I don't even know. I've never actually quantified it, right? But we are many generations in to such a deeply emasculated state of men that we have trouble even really imagining what a society would be like where men were at most times at least somewhat prepared for physical confrontation. The keyboard warrior could not exist in the pre-modern world. A guy who's just saying all this stuff and he can't back it up. No one would be like that. Because when you get violent potential, like if I say something, right, about your family, and I've met your family, they're beautiful, mashallah, it's great. At a certain level of rudeness, you're like, that's it. I don't care if this guy's a fighter, he's gonna knock me out after, but I'm gonna hit him in the face. At a certain level, we have an understanding of men that that's like a reality. The gun distorts that, where people don't go to that level because they don't have to and they can't. So in the same way that the martial arts got turned into a yin sickness and a yang sickness, the modern male got turned into a yin sickness and a yang sickness. The modern male leans into extreme softness of like dudes who can't fight and they're like passive aggressive, just like full indoor cats. And then the compensation for that is like thuggery. Have you noticed how there's like t-shirts with Scarface on it? And people look at the Godfather like that's something cool. Oh, he's a gangster, right? Oh, he's a G. This guy's a savage. No healthy civilization would look at organized crime as a symbol of masculinity. That is a sign of how dysfunctional we are. So you've got people doing like cosplay of masculinity, like the thugs. Oh, I'm a tough guy, I'm a thug, but they don't have any of the inward softness that makes masculinity real. Because you can be tough, but so can a dog. But does a dog know justice? No, right? You could be, oh, he's violent. Ooh, wow, okay. But are you a dog or are you the Khalifat al-Ard? Are you reflecting the names of God? So again, it goes back to that spiritual reality where like there's outward violence and then the meaning is the ability to protect that which is virtuous. Or are you so emasculated and soft that you can say all the nice words, oh, we're compassionate, we're gentle, I love everything. But when it comes push shove, you can't even defend those things you claim to believe in. So the way I posit this in the book is I say that traditionally we have this idea of a warrior poet. But in modernity, the pen and the sword have been torn asunder, torn apart. And so we got people with too much pen and no sword, and we got people with too much sword and no pen. We've got people who are tough, but like not thinking. And then we've got people who are thinking and have maybe good things about the heart, but like they're very weak outwardly. And the idea of a warrior poet is a more harmonized human being. That's someone who can think and act. So you were asking me before we went live, you're like, tell me about applied philosophy.
Yeah.
Now you should understand it. Philosophy is the pen.
Yes.
Application is the sword. So when I say applied philosophy, which is a term I took from my teacher, I'm very indebted to him, is the idea that like, I'm not just violence. I have philosophy about representing virtue, about embodying love, about being a beacon of light in a world of sometimes incredible darkness. And then I'm actionable on those things. So I don't just say, right, please don't do it. Please leave her alone. It's like, no, I have to be strong enough to go and like defend that woman. It's not just about a male or female thing, right? It's like when you are in a position to be the bulwark against the incursions of darkness, and it requires physicality. If you don't have the physicality, your words are fake. They're not real, especially for men. This is a hard thing for me to swallow, but I had to accept it. Especially for men. If you don't have violent capacity, your compassion is incomplete.
Interesting.
Because if I can hurt you but choose not to, that's compassion.
Yes.
If hurting you is not actually even an option, and even fighting back is an option, because I'm such an indoor cat, I'm so like, I'm just like veganed out, right?
Yeah.
Just one of these, like just like skin and bones, benign. My mercy doesn't mean anything. That's not mercy. That's pragmatism, right?
Yeah.
I'm not letting you off. I'm negotiating, right? So for a man, especially for a man, your violent capacity is proportionate to your ability to embody mercy.
How do we cultivate that? How do we get from the indoor cat to a lion?
Oh, I would say it has to be generational, because while I encourage not just men, but all people to engage in the martial arts in a harmonized way, which is hard because you go to one gym, they'll not teach you how to fight, but you'll have nice clothes. You go to another gym, they'll teach you how to fight, but the whole ontology is just commercial and capitalism. And it's like, this guy's famous. He knocked him out. It's like really base. So both of those are kind of dysfunction. And that is the point of the book, is like how to see past the dysfunctions, so that if you as an individual are trying to regain that human essence of balance, you have a bit of a roadmap to understand like where something's deficient, where something's excessive. Because right now it's not articulated. It's not actually like, we're so many generations in, there was no articulation of how to reforge and regain the balanced, harmonized human essence.
Well, where do I start? I mean,
For you, do jujitsu, bro. I could go into why, but like for you, really, and we've talked about this.
Go into why.
Huh?
Go into why.
It's okay. If you were 8, I would say do wrestling. But wrestling's so brutal on the body.
I did judo at 8.
Yeah, it's awesome. Judo's great.
Yeah.
Judo's great. Judo, wrestling, they're a little bit more harsh on the body. Jiu-jitsu is a form of grappling that's real, but it's soft enough not to break you as an adult. So it's better to do martial art training as a child. That's better.
Yeah.
But just like, okay, remember I said grappling was the qualitative?
Yeah.
And striking is the quantitative?
Yeah.
You can learn striking pretty effectively as an adult. You can learn math as an adult too. You struggle to get the nuances of language, of grappling,
yes,
as an adult. They're better done in childhood. When you get someone as a kid, they get a sensitivity in grappling that's really hard to replicate as an adult.
So I should get my son into jiu-jitsu too.
Yes. And that's why I said it's generational, because for someone in adulthood, realistically, past a certain age, you won't be a masterful grappler. That's okay, because the point is not to be violent. The point is to understand violence and then apply the philosophy.
I did
So they
Muay Thai for 7 years. I never used Muay Thai. I did Krav Maga and Muay Thai. I never used any of this outside of the gym.
I'd say it's correlated.
Yeah, but when I was younger,
And you didn't know how to fight.
in
Yeah.
Eastern Europe, I used to be a keyboard warrior once
Yeah.
in a chat for like
Allah.
my school, and then I said few bad things to one guy, and he fucked me up next day so hard that my keyboard warrior days were completely over. It was a good fight, which I lost, but I was like, okay, now. But I think it's one of the greatest lessons I had. He taught me that if you say something, you better be able to stand by it, because somebody will come and
Precisely.
somebody will let you to.
Precisely.
You'll have to answer for it, and now I'm okay. Now, I have a better skill. So if that guy would come, probably would have a better fight. I don't know if I win or not. Doesn't
Well,
matter.
I'd say more importantly, if you had the skill ahead of time, you wouldn't have said those things.
Yes.
We can't guarantee it, but
Probably
you
not.
just summarized
Probably not.
exactly what I was talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, I
It was like you didn't have a real understanding of violence.
Yes.
And so you were stirring the nest,
Yeah.
right? Not really understanding the hornet's sting. But when you understand it, you're like, oh, let's not, be hasty now. This guy can fight too.
Yeah.
And violence is actually pretty painful. When you have a real understanding of it, the mercy flows a lot more. You're a little bit more gentle with your words.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
why, like, if you're the only child, it's actually harder. Like, I have two kids now.
Yeah.
And my son, he's very sensitive. So he likes to, but he also likes to pick up on my daughter who's younger. But she's very upfront. So he'll pick her up and she'll just punch him in the face. And he learns that way, in a very nice way, to kind of control what he's saying. And I like it very much. And same with her. If she punches, he punches her back. So they know there's like a balance. There's
Yeah.
no like, there's a consequence to what you're doing.
Yes.
As an adult, we don't have consequences. People talk shit on the internet.
Yes.
Nothing happens. People go talk shit at work.
'Cause
They
of the
didn't even get
gun.
fired.
Because of the gun.
Yes.
Take away phones, the police, and the guns, right? And you can imagine, like, your words have violent repercussions in your village or in your town or in your country even. So now it's like, okay, I have to have a type of comportment. I have to have manners
Yeah.
that the gun allows me not to have. These buffer zones of peace, they erode masculine virtue and chivalry. They erode them. And that's where we are. And like I said, we're so many generations deep into this that we don't even notice it. It's just the air we breathe. We're just used to being like, there's electricity and food is abundant and no one fights because that's, it's like,
Yeah,
but-
especially in the West, there's like, woman can go and start screaming and naming you names, like to the men. And I'm
okay,
like,
so who's really protecting them?
the guns, yeah, the police.
Yes.
I know. But I'm saying is that
Yeah.
the concept of that as just woman who is, let's say, the small woman out there who's like, let's say, an old lady would just go and start screaming at somebody and calling them some racist names. I watched one of those videos. And I'm like, and this guy does nothing. I'm like, if that would happen 100 years ago, he would just go and like shut you there, or like, I don't know, punch you there, whatever.
Your
right
family
away.
might get killed.
What's that?
Your family might get killed.
Exactly.
I'm not advocating violence.
Me
I'm not
too.
saying,
Me
like,
neither.
let's go.
I'm for the police and all
I
the
do
protection.
not want
but
violence.
I'm saying is the words we
Yes.
choose sometimes are very destructive.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that the things we say, we're very careful with them. And these days, like the comments people leave, the people that tell you things in your face that no people don't react, they don't to me, because I'm actually reactive. I'll just say, if I don't like something, I'll call it out. So because I'm that way, people usually don't do it. But I know other people who I guess are more softer in such a way, maybe not as developed in this side of of being a king and whatever you said, the arrows, like
Yeah.
the boy and the king part.
We'll have to get you to read the book.
Yeah,
Because I mean, it's hard to get concepts that you just heard.
Yeah.
Like I had years.
I understand it.
Years to think about this,
Yeah,
right?
for
So
sure,
for
for
me,
sure.
I'm like, I see, and that's what I want to share. Is the lens. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, you just heard it for the first time.
Yes.
And whoever sees this just heard it for the first time. But it's a better lens to understand the martial arts. And then when you understand it, you start to see it in more and more things. And it has the ability to re-sacralize the world. And you start to see how, like, it's like, wow, there's signs in the world of divine balance, of harmony. of something that like it doesn't make sense. Like I'm flipping the coin, I just keep getting 6. It's like, oh, this is a rigged game. Yes, it is a rigged game, but it's rigged in your favor.
Yeah.
This is like, we're not just random things, like meaningless things. No, we have meaning, and the signs of the meaning are in the cosmos, and you can learn them and you can embody them, and they will cure you of your sickness. This is the most important part. It's not just, it's like not just like, oh, learn philosophy and like talk. It's like, no, see the world as it is, and it's miraculous and beautiful, and it will inspire you to be the best version of yourself, even if you don't come from my tradition.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you come from a different tradition, to see the world as it is a blessing. To see it not as it is a hindrance.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I like about you, what I notice is how you notice small things. You go to a coffee shop and then you look at the color of the coffee and that inspires you. That doesn't happen very often.
Do you mean to me or to people?
Like when I watch you doing that, you do it with authenticity. You come and you smell the coffee, for example. You look at the coffee and you're like, I love the color. I hope it tastes the same way as it looks. Then you smell it like, yes, that's good. So you appreciate small things that if you give me a cup of coffee, I'll just drink a cup of coffee. And I would even forget I drink a cup of coffee. I'm going to talk about myself. I forgot in many ways how to cherish the moment, but there's nothing else apart from the moment. And I often go and I'm like, afterwards, I'm like, why didn't I spend more time, let's say, enjoying this hot chocolate I had because I don't drink coffee? Or why didn't I, like, we went somewhere with my kids and I'm like, why am I so much in my thoughts and not just appreciating the fact that I have kids and we're in this situation? But you do it very well.
I was telling you earlier about that line from the Quran, and I can tell I misquoted it now. It was in the akramakum indallah ataqakum. So you won't hear the difference, but it matters to me because we preserve the text. And it's the idea that the most noble amongst you are the most God conscious. But God conscious, that's like a whole, you could write books on what that means. We will define it at this moment as presence. Presence. We talked about this last year. Remember I said about the idea of like being aware, like I'm at the table with the king, you're in like
Yes.
my comportment, like
Yeah.
you're at the table of reality itself. And so instead of just meaninglessness, it's like in every moment, you have the capacity to reflect divine names, to embody beauty, to radiate light. Every moment, you have the ability to be present in how amazing your own soul is. So when you practice that, it starts to become very real. When you practice presence,
How do you
not
practice
just,
presence?
well, meditation, prayer, right? Some people would say mantras, but in the Sufi tradition, we say dhikr. That's what these beads are for. They're not just like decorations. I do this
No.
thing, many times a day. Well, I'll take them and I will invoke a divine name of
Yeah, so
God.
prayer
Ya
beads.
Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif. And I'll do this for like quite a while, but you're supposed to say them not on the tongue only. You say them on the tongue and on the heart because you're trying to like inscribe the essence into your heart so that you can better embody the beauty that you're referencing. And so presence is a practice, but it's also a state. It's a state, it's a hal, it's a state of being. And like other states, the more you practice it, the more easy it comes. So if you practice anger, you'll be very good at being angry. You'll be an amazingly efficient bomb of anger.
Yeah,
But I don't recommend that,
but it's not
right?
like we practice anger. Like I don't practice anger. I get angry. Like I understand what you're saying, but this is subconscious pattern versus, I don't know, being present.
You're right.
It's a
It's
choice.
an automated response.
Yes.
So is hunger.
Yes.
Now you do long distance running.
Yes.
Okay. In long distance running, as we discussed earlier, your body is telling you to stop,
Yes.
but you tell it no. Now it's like we have two yous. We have the you saying stop and the you saying no.
Yes.
So that is the lower and higher self. The lower self is like a donkey. It's the animal part of us. its strongest desires are food and sex. If you can conquer those, the other desires become easier to conquer. And we become, instead of like donkeys, we become like riders, riding the donkey, pulling at the reins, making the donkey useful. And if we fail to do that, we're more like slaves to the donkey, and the donkey is braying and right? It's just going wild, and it gets angry, and it gets hungry, and it fornicates, it eats, it drinks, it just does whatever it wants, and we're just at the behest of this animal, almost imprisoned by our own desires.
Which is interesting. I thought about that before, because a lot of this is live in a moment. Like there's this phrase, live in a moment. I don't know if that's resonate or not. But live in a moment to somebody would be like, I just do whatever the fuck I want. And then
I
people
disagree with that definition,
know-
but I totally get what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen to me. Yes, I know. I'm just setting a stage for everybody else. So I've been the same way. When I was a student in university, I'm like, there's no tomorrow. Let's go. Drink as much as you can. Do whatever you can. Have as many women as you want. And the other person might say, let's live in a moment. Let's just enjoy the breath. And those are different, but they kind of very vaguely promote similar experience to be present. But one is about pleasure. One is about restraint.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that there is some thread of a balance. Like hunger, if you don't eat at all, you die. But if you eat too much, you
Yes.
become fat.
Yes.
Sex, if you don't do it, you don't
replicate.
You don't
which
replicate.
That's my
Yes, what I'm-
indictment of
you don't
modernity.
replicate. But also you don't experience the full power of love. There's many ways.
Yeah, and it can
Yeah.
exactly. So I love what you just said. You need a balance.
But then if you do it
So
too much, you get sick, you die. So there's death, and there's like miserable death on the side, or you become, I don't know, the just addictive,
Yeah.
useless piece
Yes.
of junk.
If you learn the lower impulses are not bad in the same way that a dog is not bad. It's just a dog. Your body just has
I love
certain
dogs.
things. I like dogs too. Your desire is not bad. Okay? But it has to be channeled into the right energy.
And that is a question. How do you channel it? And what is the decision-making process? There's a woman, let's say, and you're like,
Well, for
is
me,
that a good or bad?
Remember I said earlier, you said, what's the point of life? Kind of open-endedly. And I said, it's to fall into harmony with the ground of all being. So for me, what that means is adherence to moral injunctions from sacred law. And what you'll find is that these moral injunctions have a lot of uniformity. There's a lot of uniformity in the basic limitations that the different sages of mankind have come to espouse and realize and transmit as things that if you can control this and channel it like that, you'll be healthy and vital and you'll last. You will have a balance between the yin and the yang. You will move through space in a good way. And if you don't, you're probably going to teeter-totter and end in disaster or cause disaster for other people. So I don't want to come in here and start giving moral injunctions to people. I don't feel like this is the right format.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of I would say that traditional morality is from many different cosmologies more universal than particular, right? Like that's why the word virtue is so beautiful as a tool, because truth is a virtue. Okay. No civilization says lying is good, right? Let's keep it real simple, right? Not devil's advocate stuff, but like real simple.
Yes.
They have it doesn't matter if you're from the Vedic tradition, you're from the Buddhist tradition, you're from Confucianism. We have some kind of universal understanding that there is something sacred and beautiful and beneficial about truth. And so we say, be truthful. We just say that universally.
Yeah.
So that's that's a limit. So then the limit is truth, and then not truth is lie. And we know that following that law has a benefit to the heart.
I have a controversial question.
Oh boy, here we go.
then it fucking starts.
Oh boy. Let me, before I forget, just in
Yes.
case,
The Tao.
The Tao of War. You should check this book out. I'm very pleased with certain aspects of it. I think I could have done a better job in certain things, but like if you're interested in metaphysics, spirituality,
I definitely read it.
autodidactic curative
Yeah.
methods to navigate the world, I would be lying if I don't advocate my own book.
Amazing.
Because I actually think it's like the right thing for a lot of people at the right time.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
So back
completely.
to your controversial question. Please forgive me for
You
interrupting.
guys are ready. For those of you who just go buy the book, for the others who want to stay here, here's some heat. Let's go. You told me that I probably shouldn't read the Quran, and I'm like, because it's a harsh book, and for me as a as a child in
That
this,
was your word.
yes.
I didn't use the word harsh.
Okay, I'm using it harsh.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm saying that
Now
your
it's
your
not-
interpretation, you might see harshness in
Yes.
it. I don't see it as harsh.
Okay. Yes.
And
You-
I
you
did
saw-
advise you not
Yeah.
to read it
Yes.
yet. So
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
saying this. I'm only stopping you
Yes.
because I want to be real specific.
Yes.
I said don't read it yet,
Yes.
or don't read it alone,
Yes.
because it is a metaphysical entity that will push back against yourself.
Of course. So yes, you advised me not to read the Quran, and I, of course, listened to your advice and downloaded an Audible, going
Started
back on my
listening to
play
the Quran
home.
immediately.
Started listening it the next day because people tell me no.
Yeah,
Um,
and I'm not, and I'm like,
it's fine. It's fine. I'm just setting
It's
up
okay.
stage.
Yeah.
The question is not about actually me reading a Quran. The question is about one part of it, and I don't, if somebody's religious here, I am as new to this as possible. So I'm just going to ask my question related to this theme of
punishment and reward.
punishment and reward.
Yes, we talked about this in text
in
debate.
regards to sex. And as far as I understood from the book, and I'm paraphrasing what it says, is that you can have sex when you're married
Mhm.
or with your slaves. So now, to me, okay, if you can have sex with your wife and have sex with your slaves, to me, that is borderline into that place where somebody can treat it and start having a lot of sex.
So now let's create the other context.
Okay.
The other context are the prophetic injunctions against slavery. When you outlaw something, it doesn't go away. When you outlaw something, what happens to it in real life? It becomes a black market.
Yeah.
Right? And as a black market, the room for exploitation is vast. But as a not black market, when it's regulated, it becomes a lot harder to exploit people. And so you have to take, and this is why I say it's hard to try to digest a large, vast tradition through translation without any contextualization of why things are like they are. Now, the best resource on this, and this is so far out of like what we have time for, is I'd say Jonathan Brown. He did a book. Oh, I'm going to space on the name. I think it's called Slavery in Islam. But you can even just like Professor Jonathan Brown. He has many lectures online. They go very deep into the concept of slavery itself, how it's actually very difficult to define. And it seems to, like Aristotle, he said that slavery will not end until the looms can move themselves. And that seems to have taken place because slavery did not end because we woke up. Slavery ended because of the Industrial Revolution. And we don't need to go into that.
Yeah, but my question is
but-
more on slavery. My question is about...
Yes, I know, but it's related to
Okay,
it. It's
okay,
related
okay.
to it because we live in the modern world. And so we have a difficult time even imagining pre-modern worldviews.
Yeah.
So we say slave in English and people are thinking kunta kinte and roots, right? In the American institution of race-based generational slavery of forced labor.
Yes.
The entire upper class of the Ottoman Empire were slaves. Did you
Yeah.
know that, right? The Janissary. They were
Yes.
the richest, most powerful people. Something
Yes.
like 90% of the sultans of the Abbasid Empire were the children of slaves.
Yes.
So the concept is very hard for people to even understand. So the idea of like chattel slavery is what people understand. And I'm not trying to justify slavery or promote it.
No.
Don't get me wrong. But it's context matters.
But the thing that...
Context does matter,
yes,
right? So
yes.
when we're talking, we use that word, it doesn't have a singular definition. It doesn't have an agreed upon understanding. And as an institution, it meant radically different things in different places at different times.
Yes.
So now with that, okay, there is a permissibility of sexuality, consensual, between people who live in the same household under that situation. Not anymore. There's juristic reasons for that, because when something doesn't exist in a functional state, then it's just becomes a legal fiction. Like there's no slavery in the modern world. Okay, so that's not considered like permissible anymore. It's not. But you're thinking about it more from the point of view of sexuality.
Yes.
Now,
From like adultery is bad, and I think it mentions mentions it, at least from what I remember, quite often, that adultery is bad.
and so this is where
So
this is
my,
a great distinction.
what my brain cannot comprehend is like, okay, adultery is bad, but then you can have a consensual sexual issue with
it's public.
with your slaves.
It's public. So
yes, because you need certain witnesses.
No, not the punishability.
Okay.
I like that you said, I'm going to mess up your words, forgive me, but you said adultery is bad. What's the hallmark of adultery is the secrecy. Now the violation, okay, I'll give you what context before I even go to there. Christian Europe moralized monogamy in a way that the rest of the world didn't. Christian Europe took the concepts of pagan Roman law, which were monogamy, where you sleep with whoever you want, but you only get one person to have inheritance through your legal wife.
Yeah.
Totally different concept than what people imagine now as monogamy. Christian Europe imported the Roman monogamy and moralized it. And they create a culture of thinking in very monogamous terms, but not monogamy, if you're really honest about human nature, is not human nature.
Yeah.
You give Genghis Khan the opportunity to have 5,000 like sexual partners, he goes for it.
Yes.
That's what men, I'm not saying that's like, that should not be our goal.
Yes.
But the way that we moralized it is very particular. People didn't used to have a problem with polygamy like they do with it now. Now they made it like, oh, you're so radical, you're so experimental. Now the difference is, this is the demarcation, I would say, of morality, has to do with the rights of the child, not so much the desires of the people. It has to do with the public or private realm, which is a distinction that isn't made in the West. If we can track who the father is, right? Because the mom knows who the father is.
Yes.
The dad has to believe who the father is biologically, right?
Depends how many partners she was with.
Yes. There you go. So if you've ever met someone who's adopted at a certain point in their life, almost universally, they go and try to find their real parents. Even if the other people they treated them beautifully. They love them. They say, that's my mom, but I want to know who my real parent is. So the ability to preserve lineage of the unborn is considered a human right. Not of the living, of the unborn. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So while secret sexuality is considered a violation of the rights of the unborn, the expressions of plural sexual ideas, which is kind of like human nature, and you can't just say it's male nature, because you see in many instances, a woman will rather be a mistress than like have a normal husband by herself.
Yes.
That they make these choices.
Yes.
Not under compulsion.
Yes.
Right? Like, oh, this guy's amazing. And they'll accept being a mistress. So we see that mistress status from an Islamic law point of view. We're just talking about law as problematic, because the mistress is who is she? She's the secret.
Yes.
So then who's that kid? He doesn't get his father's name. That's a problem to us.
Yes.
Because we should not be disconnected from our actual parentage. It's part of how we understand the world. And the statistics show, at least in, modernity, very clearly that our ability to know our father and have something similar to an intact household. That doesn't mean that they're married in the normal monogamous Western context, but intact in the sense that I know that's mom, I know that's dad, right?
Yes.
And it's not like some weird thing where like mom is a secret, right? She's like they're not really married, right? So that from that point of view,
yes,
this preserves the sanity of the unborn child. It preserves their ability to navigate the world and not feel like an accident, not feel like a secret, not feel like a mistake.
Yeah.
Does this kind of make sense? Now,
It does make sense.
and I totally understand it. And remember, I am American. I have American sensibilities.
No.
I understand how that sounds to Americans.
I don't judge. I
know,
just
but
try
like,
to put the context of what I kind of. I don't even understand the book, but I was just curious.
Yeah, it's a
just
great
curious
question. It's a deep
to
question.
listen the book, and I'm like, to me, now when you're explaining that it is a law, so they're trying to create some kind of a order in a
Yes,
in a
because
situation where it's like adapt to what it currently is, but try to kind of navigate very hard dynamics.
it's the channeling of human nature into an optimal legal format.
Yes.
So it's considered a violation to separate a child from the knowledge of their father or from the right of their name. Okay?
Yeah.
So like at least in Islamic law, the children of slaves are not slaves. They are legitimate members of the father's household.
Yeah.
Legitimate.
Yeah.
That's very different than the mistress concept. So what happens in the West, because of the Roman monogamy concept, is we got side chicks.
Yeah.
And we have mistresses.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of sneaky stuff. And I be sliding into the DMs, right? The language reveals itself. We know it's sneaky.
When it comes from you, it sounds so bad. Like, just don't do it.
No, but it really is. If you look at European aristocracy and then you read about the history, you're just like, bro, they were all sleeping with all kinds of women.
Their
But it was
DMs were
like,
full.
they were like not able to talk about it. There was no legal space where his actual wives, he would have like 15 hoes.
Yeah.
Excuse my language. But he couldn't have 15 hoes. And so he had to say, this is my wife. And it was like this like formal, like this like pretend marriage where you're just cosplaying king and queen. And then you actually have all these illegitimate children. So in Europe, the concept of the bastard is like part of the fabric. You're like this rich, sometimes like disavowed, disowned, like prince that could have been but never was.
Yeah.
Like that's
a romantic stuff.
What did he do to be born like that?
Yeah. Definitely.
What crime? So from my point of view, I'm like, let them because it's very rare. To pull off polygamy is not for most men.
Yeah.
Most men are not kings.
Yeah. I was
to pull
talking
that
to
off,
a friend of mine.
that's not most people. So like for that guy that's like, yo, the hoes want it, right? Astaghfirullah, I'm joking. I'm just trying to make you laugh. Forgive me.
No, just,
but like
when you say the word host,
it's funnier
like,
that way, right? Because it's a serious subject.
That word.
It's serious, and I'm trying to like give some levity. But he's got multiplicity.
Yeah.
How do I give justice to the children? Because the idea of like you don't get my name, you're not in my inheritance, you're not even in the family, we don't recognize you. That's my country, by the way. Thomas Jefferson had relations with his slave, Sally Hemings.
Mm-hmm.
This is very well documented. People would come over to dinner and they're like, looking at the servant, they're like, that's his son. That's his son. They like, no, looks just like him, but doesn't recognize him. To me, that's injustice.
For sure.
100%. That's injustice. So I'm not trying to say like, go get a slave. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying go get a second wife. I'm not saying but I'm saying from the reality of human nature, there are things that occur that when they are forced into the black market, they cause more harm than when you give a legal outlet for them to exist.
Yeah. I had a dinner
with you. The comments are going to blow me up. I'm okay. Bismillah, man. I'm just, and if I make, if I make a mistake, it's on me. If I say anything right, I get that from my teachers. My mistakes are just my own.
I had a dinner with a few friends from Saudi Arabia, and we actually talked about that. I'm like, is that really a thing right now there that people have multiple wives?
Oh,
he's like, yes, but he's like, all of them needs to have equal rights.
Yes.
Like if I buy a house for one wife,
gotta get in the house for the second one.
It needs to be as big and as good for a second wife.
Yeah, this polygamy thing ain't
pretty rare.
It ain't cheap, bro.
Yeah. If you're like really well off, then you can have it. It's not like for regular people.
No, it's not.
And actually,
my wife
was sitting at this table. And she's like, "That sounds really good." Like, okay. Okay, because it's like this is. I mean, because usually, yes, in a West, like in America, it often happens when one wife just got forgotten. This is my ex-wife. She lives her life. I don't
Yeah.
even know who she is. I don't want to see my
Yeah.
kids. Here, it's like it's very fair. Okay, this is my wife. She has this, and this is my wife. She'd have the same. I think as a concept for people who like this kind of thing to have multiple wives, or at least want to divorce and get another wife, they all need to have as much and equal opportunities because you spend time with them and energy.
Let's give some examples from the West to give some contradistinction. In the West, you got college sweethearts that get married, that grow old. Okay.
Yeah.
A man at 40, right, can marry another 20-year-old woman if he's like on his stuff. If he's like got charisma,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If he's really like okay, a
Like
man
you,
at
yeah.
40
You probably
can
could
marry,
have, you
can
could have
marry a
married at
20-year-old.
20 and now like again.
Totally possible.
Yeah.
A woman at 40 cannot do that. It's just the reality of how we age. There's actually a martial art relation to this in the striking grappling that I won't go into.
Now a woman at 40 is gonna get so much.
Look, man, it's not
coming your way.
No, it's
There's-
not. This is
I
not
think that
anti-female.
I'm telling you, there's a 40-year-old woman who can marry again because life is moving on. Like I mean, the
I'm not
developments
talking
and
about
aging.
exceptions. I'm talking about
Okay.
generalities.
Okay.
In general,
Yes.
in general, of
Yeah.
course, there's exceptions. My beloved prophet married a woman 15 years older than him. And that was his, that was like his only wife for the, a good portion of his life. Not the
Yeah.
point. My mother was older than my father. And they were like married to the end. My father passed away. Allah yarhamahu. He was a beautiful man. They gave me the best example of marriage. I never saw them fight, right? They were like, so I'm not like stuck in this manosphere red pill thinking. I don't want to represent myself, but we're talking generalities.
Yes.
Forget exceptions. Of course there's exceptions. In general, a man with charisma, with fast speech, and he has the manners, can marry a much younger woman.
Yes.
In general, a woman is not capable of retaining long-term, short-term, okay. Long-term, a much younger man. So what happens in the West is not always, but people grow, they grow. The man still has a sexual option that the woman does not have.
Yes.
Their sexual, you could say like appraisal. I'm trying to think of like a word, like their sexual ability to attract the opposite sex becomes asymmetrical.
Yes.
Where the man can replace her and she would not be able to replace him.
Yes.
Now you got two options. We don't have two options. We have more than two options, but we're making a straw man argument. One is he leaves his wife and marries the younger girl. How many times have we seen that happen in the West? This is like a cultural problem, right? The man, he's just like, I could, the secretary, he gets distracted. He has an affair.
Yeah.
He ends up marrying the secretary. He ends up marrying the younger woman and he leaves his wife. Or having a second wife is not bad and he keeps them both.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, look, and you're going through menopause. I still love you, but like I'm a man and this is how we are. So you can stay and I will take care of you and we'll still be like man and wife, but I'm going to have this as well. Or so from the Western context of like Disney La La Land, like, no, it's just soulmates, all that.
It's
all
all this princess bullshit that people don't actually do. If people would do what they say they do, like they say one thing and they do the other thing. They make those vows. We're here forever after until we die. They say this stuff. And then 60% of marriages get ended in a divorce. Like, what are you talking about? The thing that you say is complete bullshit.
Yeah, we have a cultural lying problem for sure in modernity. And so I'm not trying to advocate for multiple wives, but I think I can demonstrate that the idea of not divorcing your wife of a long time and breaking up your family and leaving your kids all confused about which, does dad disrespect mom and stuff like that, like honoring her till death do our part. Okay. Like actually do that.
Yeah.
But when you can not keep the new woman a secret and not have to discard the new woman to make the new woman official, because that's how we made it. We forced ourselves into this legal contraption where it's like to do his nature, which is plurality, he has to either hide it, which is
Yes.
bad for the offspring, or get rid of his original wife, which is bad for her and his first offspring.
Yes.
And again, this is not for most men. Most men are not pulling this off, but it happens so often in the West. Look at Japan, bro. They've done surveys in Japan. You ask the average woman, like, do you expect your husband to cheat? 90% of them, yeah, he's going to cheat. They just expect it. To me, I'm like, I love Japanese culture. Don't get me wrong. That's one aspect of their culture that I think is dysfunctional.
Yes.
Like that to me is dysfunctional.
But going back to your book, actually, this is all comes back from those men sitting cats at home. Like
it's related at least. Yeah. Because, well, a part of it is that, and a part of it is, as I mentioned, the enculturation of monogamy being falsely moralized through the importation of Roman marriage law into the Christendom worldview. So into medieval Christian worldview, because that wasn't from Jewish law, right? Like Solomon had like 700 wives. Whether that's accurate or not is irrelevant. Abraham in English had 2 wives. Polygamy was normal for the Jewish prophets, who the Muslims also believe in, of course. And then the addition of monogamy, which is Roman, and priesthood, which is celibate, became kind of like a weird way to sort of force people's sexuality to like channel through a very particular, moral construct that, in my estimation, does not actually align with human nature. And it causes, in many cases, a lot more harm than than the things that it solves. So like there is some, obviously, monogamy is a great solution in many, many instances, often.
Yeah.
But when you force it on people and polygamy is not an option, like there's that certain type of woman that's going to go after the powerful man, even though he's already married.
Yeah.
There's that certain type of man that's going to go after the second and third girl, even though he's already married. And he's going to do it on the sneaky, or he's going to do it legally. And I'd say out on the table legally, where I know that Sally Hemings' kid is Jefferson's son, is better for the son. It's better for society. I think it's a healthier way. And if I've made a mistake, the mistake is mine. And forgive me if my words are offensive. Honestly, forgive me. I don't say these things to be like, you, I think, enjoy controversy a little bit more than I do. Just a bit, right? You kind of like, ooh,
I just enjoy when you say the word host. I don't know. There's something.
I say that in jest. They're not hoes. They're human beings with beautiful souls.
Yeah.
But in the modern context, it's more appropriate because we have lost the shyness of sexuality. Like, so what is a hoe? Okay. We mean prostitute. So I don't mean literal prostitutes. I mean prostitute adjacent behavior, where you are doing the sacred combination of the yin and the yang, which is the sexual union, for a low commercial transactory, reason. It becomes kind of base, and so there is a cheapening of the soul that has occurred in modernity, where something that could be sacred, and I believe that this is a very, I think it's not taken lightly to take the yin qi, the energy, the prana, and the yang qi, and to combine them. It has very serious metaphysical implications. It's a spiritual reality in itself. And when you reduce that to a commercial transaction, which is the essence of prostitution, it's like what I was saying in the book, taking the martial arts and making it just about money, taking sexuality and making it just about money. And that's a hallmark of modernity in itself, in that we take form and separate it from meaning, right? So we have like schools, you got walls and you got classes, but we don't really get education, right? You got governments, they got laws, but we don't really get justice. You get people bodybuilding, big old muscles, right? But they're focused about the look of the muscle, not the strength of the muscle. You got a lot of religious people, but we're kind of short on spirituality. So form and meaning are supposed to be harmonized, and modernity has an epidemic of the separation of form and meaning. And this is just one more instant where that's the case.
Amazing. So if we have another poem, let's do that before we go. So we're going to end this with a poem.
Okay. I got one for you. I don't memorize them because I'm just mentally deficient.
If you are, honest. I don't know who is mentally strong, then you're...
No, I mean, I got a lot of poetry, right? Like I published another book called The Axiology of Warriors as well. And it's poetry, but it's poetic prose. And so it's like, I won't even go into that book, but it's beautiful. I'm happy with it. I've gotten very good responses from the people who have read it. Obviously, if you want to find this book, maybe just look me up on Instagram. It's just
We'll
my,
put it in the description.
put a link or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Axiology of Warriors, it came out pretty well. I'm happy with it. This is a poem. I won't give the context. I was talking to someone, and then they asked me, like, they have this habit of asking like really profound questions, and then I have to sit there and like think about them. And then the poem was the response to the question, and it's about home, because I was a traveler and I'm still a traveler, and I've lived in probably like 10 countries. I've probably visited like 40 or 50. It's been a great blessing to travel, but the cost of travel is like rootedlessness. And so someone asked me about home, and I thought about it, and this was my response. They say home is where the heart is. So it's a place where no one's heartless. But the silent part is, a home can be a Byzantine dome with marble arches, an ancient church where they recite the words from parchments, speaking incantations meant to find the heart's compartments. Home is where you go when there's nowhere left to be. It's a prison cell of closed walls where actually you're free. It's where facades are put away to the highest of degree, and you stop being as you seem instead of seeming as you be. Home is where the inner light is cherished. It's where there's no need to be embarrassed. And even in dispute, it still has a sense of fairness. And people are less careless because they have a keen awareness that you're the home to them the way they're the home for you. And there are echoes in the walls of every little thing you do, and that there is weight in every syllable that ever gets spoken, because a home can be so beautiful, but can also be broken. And then a home is not a home, but an elaborate shelter, a place we serve some prison time until we're an elder. Roofs can stop the rain, and walls can keep it warm. But a home is a niche where the hearts can transform. A home is where people are held tightly nightly, spoken to politely and allowed to be unsightly, because even in their naked self they are understood more rightly, where the inner light shines brightly when we are instead of might be. A home should be appreciated and never taken lightly. A home is what you miss when far and where you are missed. It's where you don't have to fight a war and can simply exist. It's where grandmothers tell stories and where children are kissed. A home is where we feel peace, but the silent part is, it's only true when you have peace too, because home is where the heart is.
Amazing.
Mashallah.
Thank you, everybody. See you next one.
Bye-bye. Right. Mashallah. It's been a pleasure, bro. It's been a pleasure. We're going to get some hate.
Always.